Good evening. I'm Chris Trumbauer, the Budget Officer for Arundel County, and welcome to the District 4 Budget Town Hall meeting with County Executive Pittman and Councilmember Andrew Pruski. We're going to get started in just a moment, but I wanted to run through how this evening will work. First, we're going to hear some opening remarks from the council member and from the county executive, and then the county executive will go through a brief presentation. After that, we'll get to public comment by the viewers. And that's how our show is going to run today. So without further ado, I'll turn it over to County Executive Stuart Pittman.
Thank you, Chris, and welcome everybody. This is very different from last year and the year before where we did these live, and there was such a great turnout in District 4 and talked a lot about swim centers and a lot of other great things. And I love the District 4 town halls because I have your councilman, Andrew Pruski, with me, who I meet with in advance of these, and I get a very long list, and we'll be talking about some of those items tonight, I'm sure, but he knows exactly what this district needs, and that's really helpful for us. So what we're gonna do is, Chris Trumbauer is our new budget officer. He's been acting for a few months. Many of you know him because he's a former councilman from District 6, and he's been on my staff from the beginning. A real pillar of our administration. And we found that there's really nothing better than having somebody who's embedded in the budget office, who is really part of our staff and is embedded in our staff on behalf of the budget office, so that every decision that we make in county government is fiscally responsible. We're looking at the budget all year round, but this is the time of year where we get started and we put together what we're going to be doing starting for FY22, which starts in July. So we have with us here a few people I want to mention, and then I'm going to turn it over to Councilman Pruski. Bridget Smith is here from Congressman Sarbanes' office. Thank you for joining us. And then from our staff, we have Matt Power, our Chief Administrative Officer, oversees all departments. Kay Bodgester Brown, our Chief of Staff. Pam Jordan, our Deputy CAO for Health and Human Services. Lori Rhodes, our Deputy CAO for Land Use. Chris Phipps, who runs our Department of Public Works. Jessica Lays, who's our Deputy Director of Recreation and Parks. Carissa Gowan, who's our Director of Aging and Disabilities. Brian Ulrich from Office of Transportation. So thank you all for spending your evening with us. They will be taking notes, I'm sure, and moving as quickly as possible on some of the things that you may be mentioning that are more urgent than the budget. But we'll be talking about all of these when we get our meetings with the department heads. And so I'm gonna turn it over to Councilman Pruski, who will share some of his thoughts.
Thank you, Mr. County Executive and the team from the Budget Office, and certainly all the folks joining us, especially the citizens of Anne Arundel County and District 4. I just want to open tonight's remarks. This is the first time, obviously, since the incident that happened at the Capitol. I know the council will be discussing this further, but I do want to recognize certainly the folks that have been impacted, and particularly in District 4. We have some U.S. Capitol police officers that actually work in DC and live in my district, and then also other folks that work on the Hill. And I certainly want to recognize those that were impacted. And again, the county council itself will be adding things, but I did want to recognize that that we should all obviously speak against violence and obviously support our folks at home and doing what's best and a smooth transition. But getting to tonight's events related to the budget, I want to thank the county executive for holding these town halls. I know we kind of repeat this over and over again, but when we do talk about public input, this is exactly what we need to hear from the citizens that are coming to testify, to share their view about what's the priorities. And as your council member, you certainly know that I'm open to speaking, whether it's through Facebook messaging, Twitter, contacting my office. We try and be as responsible and proactive as possible. I certainly want to recognize we're in a unique time given COVID-19 and the pandemic. Typically, I know the county executive and the budget office kind of joke the list that I always send in for projects, but I'm also cognizant that we have to be fiscally responsible in this year's budget, and you'll see a presentation here shortly that aligns to that. But in particular, I do want to make some just general comments about, even though we're in the middle of a pandemic, we have to make improvements, particularly in West County. Not too long ago, Colonel Nyland, who's the garrison commander from Fort Meade, presented in front of the county council, and it's kind of introduced himself throughout our area. And he mentioned that there are additional folks and jobs coming to Fort Meade, which is certainly great news. But that also presents challenges, right? When we talk about development, growth, and even the growth that has occurred, the quality of life things like our firefighter, police, our schools, all those types of issues. And certainly as your councilman, I recognize that. And I'm hoping that we can continue those improvements. I want to thank the county executive and the budget team and everyone in the administration for moving some things forward. Certainly, we want to get shovels in the ground and making sure that happens, but we need to continue that progress. You're going to see some highlights tonight, but I also want to hear feedback, right? This is a part of the process. As May comes on in the first week in May, the county executive will introduce the budget. And certainly as your council member, we have the final fiscal authority. We have to work together, right? And that's what this input is all about in doing that. So this is a great opportunity for you all. And it ranges from a new fire station in the General's Highway area, all the way to Odenton and Parks, road improvements, to Russet, Maryland City, looking at school improvements and things along those lines. Each community has their own needs. And so I don't want to get into specifics because we're in a live setting. Normally we had people, obviously, we'd have even further discussion, but we do want to take your input. And again, I want to thank everyone for being here. And hopefully we can get our message across about how important District 4 is, but also to the rest of the county. So thank you again for joining us. Looking forward to this session.
All right, so we are going to do a little presentation here just to give you some background and information. We're going to start out with Chris Trumbauer, and then I'll jump in after that.
Great, thank you, County Executive. Just once again, I'm Chris Trumbauer, the Budget Officer for Anne Arundel, and I believe Jenny's behind the scenes turning the pages on the presentation, so we'll jump right in and go to the first slide. So what you're looking at here is the basic budget timeline. And the first thing that I want everyone to realize is that budget actually starts for the county back in September. Pretty much as soon as we pass one budget, we start working on the next one. So the capital budget program begins pretty early. We need to get that buttoned up by January to submit to the Planning Advisory Board. And then right about the end of the year, we start working on the current expense budget. At the same time, we have our Affordability Commission working to give recommendations on the county affordability levels. So right where we are right now, in the middle of January, things are just heating up. And you can see that most of the actions on the bottom half of the slide are still to come starting in February. So it was important to the county executive that we have these public meetings during the time when there's still an opportunity to shape the budget. So he wanted to hear from constituents and see what your priorities are and work with the council members for what their priorities are before we finalize the proposed budget, which this year, because May 1st is on a Saturday, will be submitted to council on April 30th. And then the council will have to pass the budget by June 15th, and it becomes effective July 1st. So this next slide, this is where the county revenue comes from. And you'll notice there's two large sources, bigger dwarfs than everything else. Property taxes is number one. This is our most robust revenue source. In 21 and in this year, we're estimating about $775 million. That's a slight increase year over year from fiscal year 20. And a small increase on local income tax as well, we're projecting. And that's kind of a surprise, a good surprise for us, because last year in the spring, when we put the 21 budget together, we were very aware of the fiscal impacts of the COVID pandemic. But because of the federal stimulus and other assistance programs, it looks like we're going to turn out to be hopefully okay on local income tax. But as you go through the rest of the revenue sources, you see a lot of small red downward facing arrows, which indicate that's projecting a decrease year over year from FY20, which is unusual. Typically we look for our revenue sources to grow. One caveat I will say, right now, the current projection for recordation and transfer tax is 95 million. But if the real estate market continues to stay hot and hold on, we do imagine that we would exceed that. But we still have almost 6 months to go in the fiscal year. So we got our fingers crossed. I think we can move on to the next one. So this is the other side of the book, the expenditures. So you can see right off the bat, our largest expenditure by far is to our good friends at the Board of Education to make sure that our students are receiving a world-class education. That's about $857 million. The next biggest tranche there is public safety. This is police and fire and detention and everything else that contributes to that. That's $333 million. And then you go down from there, general government operations, human services, and then you get to things like debt service and land use. And then some of our component units, the community college, library, and the courts are down at the bottom of that chart. But you can see these are pretty big numbers. It takes a lot of money to make Anne Arundel County government work, but we're making it happen. So next slide. Okay, this is just a little bit more detail on our Board of Education funding. It is over half of the operating budget. That's 51% of the county's recurring revenue. And we do give them direct county funding every year when the budget is struck. And then there's other components of that that aren't reflected in the budget book as going to the Board of Ed, but that contribute to helping them operate. So that's debt service on their capital projects, the school health officers, and then school resource officers and school safety is about 7.6 million. So you total that all together, that's about 857 million and change to our good friends at the school board. Okay, with that, I'll turn it back over to County Executive Pittman to run through some highlights of the current year budget.
Yeah, so if you remember at the beginning of this year, the pandemic had started and revenue projections were down. And fortunately, things weren't as bad by the end of the year as we projected. So we were careful, we were fiscally responsible, and that leaves us in a much better place going into this year. But even though it was a lean year in the budget last year, we were able to do some fund some priorities, one of which is in public safety. And it was a year where we had negotiated the contracts for both our police and firefighters to get them to the level that our neighboring counties are at in terms of pay. We were paying less. It was making it difficult to recruit. And that was a goal that the county had really set years ago to get there. And we managed to get there this year. We are slowly increasing staffing as well and making progress there. We have a federal SAFER grant for the fire department. And we've been gradually increasing to try to get up to where the national standards are for both fire and police in terms of staffing. So let's jump to from public safety to education. Top priority for many of you and for me as well. The year before was a bigger year for us. This last year was a little bit more lean, but we did manage to keep up with the growth in our student population by adding classroom teachers so that class sizes would not grow. We added 76 new special ed positions because that was an area where we were falling behind and we needed to catch up, and 12 behavioral health specialists. It was an okay year on teacher pay, not a great year. They got their COLA and their step. They actually ended up negotiating one year back step for some of those teachers. They still have back steps that they're working to get funded. So yes, jumping to environment, we added $3 million for additional park funding. Park renovation funding, and hopefully you're seeing that. I know you're about to see a lot of it at Gork Park in Odenton. We also are transitioning to a thing called the Land Use Navigator, which is an online system so that when development applications get submitted, residents can go right in and follow the process. And that's still in the process of being implemented. It will make the whole process work more quickly and more transparently for everybody. We also funded something that I had promised at the beginning of my administration, which is a hard look, a study at the impact fees paid by developers on development and a study of the fiscal impacts of different kinds of development to make sure that we are covering the costs of the infrastructure, the schools, the roads, public safety, parks, and all of that when we do development and not digging ourselves into a fiscal hole. So that's underway. That's just getting started, but we funded it in last year's budget. And then infrastructure, you might remember that we created a thing 2 years ago called the fund for permanent public improvements to catch up on a backlog of infrastructure in this county that had been growing a couple $1 billion worth. And it was 0.1% increase in income taxes. We'll look at our income tax rates in just a minute. But it's allowed us to keep up on school construction according to the plan that has been established for our projected growth in student population and to modernize our schools. We finished the police training center, which is a fantastic new training place for both the academy and for our current officers to maintain their training. We've actually set aside money for improvements on the Route 2 and Route 3 corridors. They're state highways, but we are just finalizing an agreement with the state, finally, after many years of promises, to implement a series of improvements there to get traffic moving at failing intersections. So you'll be hearing a lot more about that soon. And we funded two new fire stations. Those are just some of the highlights of a large capital improvements budget that we won't get into all the details. But for your district, District 4, here are some of the capital projects that are underway or are being funded. And I won't go through each one, but you can, if you want to get to this slide presentation, if you've got a pencil, you can find it if you Google and search, I'm sure. But if you go to aacounty.org/yourbudget/#town halls, you can find District 4 and you can see these details. So jumping to fiscal expectations for 22. So our budget office does projections based on what the economy looks like and all of our revenue sources. And the good news is it's not as bad as we thought it might be, but it's very uncertain looking into the out years. But for FY22, we will have incremental recurring revenue, which means that our major sources of revenue, you saw income and property tax increased this year somewhat. Generally, in most years, it increases $50–60 million. Will be there this year with that increase, which is what we use to fund, I'll talk about in a minute, some things, some obligations that we have that always grow. So that's good news. Long term, less certain. And we will have, as we normally do at the end of the year, a fund balance that helps us to get into the next year in a healthy position. So we were fiscally responsible in the way we dealt with the pandemic. And then the year before, we added revenue to meet needs that we knew we would have. And it's put us in a pretty solid place so that we don't see any major changes in this year's budget. The CARES Act money, though, you've probably heard a lot about, $101 million, basically a block grant to Anne Arundel County from the federal government. And that has made it possible for us to provide services during this pandemic to businesses assistance, eviction prevention, a lot of funds to the health department to do all the contact tracing and testing, and now the vaccination work. It's been invaluable, extremely important. And so we want to thank our members of Congress for getting that through. Unfortunately, that's spent, pretty well spent. And so some of the fund balance that we have will be used to cover costs of continuing those programs into this year, because we're still going to need them because we're not out of the woods yet. Next slide. So then on the expenditure side, with that extra $50–60 million or so, we know that we're going to have increased debt service on our capital improvements, the loans of at least about $10 million. Benefits increase every year because of their costs, retirees, healthcare, and all of that. And then both the union representative employees, but also our other employees have pay increases, small, but when you add them up, they're significant. So those are expected non-discretionary increases. And then in addition, we will be looking hard, and these are the things that we're talking about, is what we can afford to do that might be new. And we look at our schools, we look at our pay packages, community college. We've had a hiring freeze, a partial hiring freeze that we hope to undo that will cost us something. And, you know, near and dear to, I think, all of our hearts is our health and human service programs in a time where particularly our low wage workers and our low income residents have had a really bad year. And then each department has supplemental budget requests that they come in with. And, to be honest, most don't get funded, but they are specific things that departments believe that they should add to their budgets to provide better services to the residents. So we consider all of those each year as each department comes in and makes their pitch. So let me run through these last few here. Our property tax rate, just for perspective compared to other counties, is 93 cents per $100 of assessed value. There are 6 counties lower than ours. That one tall one is Baltimore City, and they're way higher than all the others because they lost so much of their tax base in recent years. But we're low on that scale. And then the next one is our income tax rates, where we pay 2.81%. Compared to most I think all central Maryland counties are at that top 3.2% level, except for us. And we're down among some of the rural counties with a significantly lower income tax rate. And we like that. We like having low taxes. Next slide. So the COVID economy, I threw this slide in here. I got it from the Washington Post. We gave them credit here. To compare what's happened in this recession to past recessions, you can see 3, and the different lines with the different colors are the different quadrants of wage earners. So purple is the lowest 25% of wage earners. And you can see that their loss of jobs among them in this, the fourth one, coronavirus crisis, in this recession, they lost some 30% of their jobs, whereas the highest income earners lost virtually no jobs, and the middle income earners lost a little bit. So we know that the low wage workers have really, because they're the frontline workers, they're the essential workers, they're in the entertainment industry and restaurants. They're the ones that've gotten hit hard. People whose money is in the stock market have done fine. So let's move to the next slide. And I threw this in here. I talked about this a little bit last year. It's a proposal that income taxes at the county level no longer be a flat rate. So we're at 2.8%. They used to be progressive because they were a piggyback on the state rate. So there were higher rates for higher income, lower rates for lower income. There's a proposal before the General Assembly. I believe it's likely to pass. It was supported by the Maryland Association of Counties to give each county the authority, if they want to have a slightly higher rate for higher income earners and can lower the rate for others. So if we look at the next slide, you can see a couple of scenarios, and there are lots of ways to do this, but depending on your income level, the scenarios that we would be looking at, if you make an individual over 500,000 or a family over 600,000, you might get a very slight increase in your income tax rate if this were done, which would create revenue for the county that could either be used to fund programs, or scenario 2, it could be used to lower the taxes on everybody below that. So with more savings for people at the very bottom. So that's what we mean by progressivity. And then the last slide is really, or the last couple of slides, are county resources and ways to interact. 311, which we call See, Click, Fix, Open Arundel, and our online budget tool. So the next slide, you can see that this is the homepage of the county website. And the 3 on the right, the bottom one is Report a Concern, 311 on your phone, or you can go to the website. And anything you see in the county, in your community that you want to report, that you want to have fixed, you report it there. And if you look at the next slide, you can see that through Open Arundel, our STAT program, we did 19,015 of these last year. And we monitor each month, and we monitor whether they're being resolved. And then the next slide is something that we did not have at this time last year. We call it Open Arundel, and it's performance metrics in a lot of different categories. If you go to open performance, you can look at every department of county government and see how they're measuring themselves in terms of progress, and look at their numbers and look at their progress. So it's interesting to look at during budget time to see where we're doing well and where we're not doing as well. And then the next slide is the budget tool that you can go to play around with the county budget, and you can add and subtract, and you can look at our revenues and see how you know, make up your own mind about how we should pay for things. So last slide, if you go to aacounty.org/your-budget, you can click on all of these things and interact that way. So I will stop talking, because the reason that we're really here is to hear from you. And I'm going to turn it over to Layla Jones, who is your Community Engagement and Constituent Service Representative. And she will lead us through the public comment section of the meeting.
Thank you very much, Mr. Pittman. Good evening, everyone, and thank you so much for attending our first budget meeting. So if you would like to have your comment, if you'd like to give testimony and speak directly to Mr. Pittman and Councilman Persky, there's a, let me just go through it, how we go about doing that. You will see on the bottom of your screen, there is a raise hand function. You need to click on that, and each person will have 2 minutes to speak, to give their testimony. To make things easier, we'll have a timer on the screen so that you can keep track of how long you're talking. And we realize there's quite a few people here who may want to speak. So unfortunately, due to time constraints, Mr. Pittman and Councilman Persky may not be able to respond to every comment, but they will do so at the end. I will, once I've noticed the raise hand buttons, I will call on your name. I will ask you to unmute yourself, and then you will have the opportunity to speak. Sounds good? So we have a handful already. We have Mr. Zapersky and Brian Holstander. I will call on Mr. Zapersky. Would you mind unmuting yourself?
There we go.
Go
Okay,
ahead.
my name is Ray Sapersky. I'm the president of the Maryland City Community Association, as well as the Laurel Park Impact Committee. One of my questions is, over the last several years, the streets in Maryland City have all been repaved. And I was hoping that the budget will allow for the finishing of the streets within our community, especially I think there's Marganza South and Old Line Avenue.
Excellent. And let me just clarify too that we actually won't respond to each thing. We really want your input, and then at the end we'll each attempt to summarize. So, but we got that down. Finish paving the streets, Maryland City. Thank you, Ray.
I apologize, I was on mute. Next, we have Mr. Brian Holstander. Sorry if I messed up your name.
Yep, Brian Holstander, representing Anne Arundel County Professional Firefighters. Thank you so much for having me, and thank you, County Executive Pittman and Councilman Persky. We're here because we understand it's been a tough 10 months. We've been on the front lines of the pandemic. And everything that we do to keep people safe starts right here today, and it starts with the budget. And we are very thankful that even before we knew what was barreling down at us, we had a budget that provided for PPE and personnel through the SAFER grants that has allowed us to serve our citizens. But the fight isn't over yet. And the biggest thing that we look forward to in Chief Wolford's budget this year is funding to take those personnel that we got through the SAFER grant and train them up to the paramedic level. The ambulances have been just run ragged, and the people on them also. And we'll feel the effects in our department for years to come. And we need to get the new generation in, get them trained so we can have an uninterrupted and high quality service that everyone deserves and that we expect of ourselves. So thank you. We support Chief Wolford's budget, and we urge everyone to support it also. Thank you.
Next, we have Miss Andrea Mansfield.
Thank you very much. I'm an Odenton resident, obviously. I live in Piney Orchard, but I also serve as chair of the Odenton Town Center Advisory Committee. And I'm here this evening to urge your strong support for the Odenton Library Park. As you may know, a feasibility study was done not too long ago. Over the summer, another component was done for that study. And the consultant found that a passive park is able to be located on the property right next to the Odenton Library, which is right in the middle of the town center. And as you know, that is a designated growth area. It is one of the areas that we are very interested in having it be kind of the living, workable type of community I think that we all are looking for. The Odenton Park is actually one of the projects I think that has come our way that is providing the best value and benefit to the citizens of Odenton, especially in that town center area. So we've been working very hard, working with the community. We strongly urge your support. And I believe you may have received several letters from the Town Center Commons HOA, as well as the condo HOAs. I know the Central Maryland Chamber is supportive, the Heritage Society. Fort Meade has also identified park areas as a big improvement needed for their employees. So we know, budgets may not be quite as tight as we thought, but if you could somehow incorporate some funding to get that park project moving, we would greatly appreciate it. Thank you.
And I just have to jump in and say that I'll add to that list, Councilman Pruski. I'm looking at his list and it's priority number 1.
Thank you, Ms. Mansfield. Next, we have Ms. Christy Simon.
Can you hear me? Okay.
Yes, we can.
Okay, good evening. My name is Christy Simon. I'm the president and CEO of the Central Maryland Chamber, and we are members of the Odenton Town Center Advisory Committee. And I'm here tonight to express our strong support of the proposed community park at the Odenton Library and encourage funds for the park to be included in the budget. Chamber members, the surrounding business community, and residents of Odenton have expressed the desire for more family-oriented outdoor space to enjoy healthy activities in the area. This plan is a designated growth area in the county, and the Odenton Town Center Park has been discussed for several years. The use of available open space next to a community-oriented location like the public library is a perfect match. We're thrilled with the proposed design, which encourages people to get out and enjoy a healthy lifestyle. The plan includes safe walking trails, bike paths, an amphitheater, and dog parks, as well as plans for trees and landscaping to preserve the natural look and feel of the area. If the community wants to attract businesses and jobs to the community and continue supporting our friends over at Fort Meade, there must be a plan to accommodate the families who live here and those who may be moving into the area. The Odenton Town Center needs to be livable and walkable, and the Odenton Library Park would be a great addition to the community. The Central Maryland Chamber is excited about this park, and we look forward to seeing it come to fruition. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Simon. Next, we have Christina Dinn.
Hi, my name is Christina Dinn, and I am a resident of Odenton. I live in the Maple Ridge neighborhood, and in this neighborhood, we're within walking distance of 3 public schools, Chapel Elementary, as well as the middle and high school. And there are several young children that live within this neighborhood. So my concerns are twofold that I wanted to address. So first is the increased speeding and traffic from the Chapelgate area through Williamsburg Lane due to the increase of traffic from Old Chapel Road, as well as traffic from Route 3 due to this area being a cut through for several drivers trying to get to the highways. Another concern that I have that I'm hoping will also be addressed is the lack of sidewalks around some of these neighborhoods that prevent a safe walking environment to these schools. There are, some great sidewalks, but unfortunately, some of the main areas where children would be walking to these public schools are, just grassy areas, or they have to walk alongside the road. So these are just two areas that I've noticed within my area that a lot of the neighbors are really concerned about, are even considering moving from, this great town. So I was hoping if there's some way that we could address these.
Thank you, Ms. Dinn. Next, we have gentleman, Mr. Mike Posdall. I apologize if I ruined your name.
No, you did very well with it. Thank you.
Thanks.
Good evening. My name is Mike Posdall, Mr. Pittman, and I'm a resident of Odenton and also the president of GORC. And I will admit, and I'm very happy to see, I feel like we've made progress with capital projects in our area. We are still definitely in need of more, with our area growing faster than anywhere. My concern is the fact that I feel like capital projects are moving at a snail's pace. While I see capital projects occurring elsewhere much more quickly, we've still yet to see shoveling the ground for a lot of the things that have been approved. And I'm wondering if we're going to be making any efforts to try and improve that. It's always, when we ask why things happen, there's always the usual government bureaucracy answers. And I'm hopeful that we can make strides to actually see some of these improvements and not just talk about budgets and trying to, campaign for things, but actually start to see these improvements come to light. So thank you.
Thank you, sir. Next, we have Ms. Carol Cason.
Good evening. I'm Carol Cason, manager of the Odenton Library. I'm testifying this evening in support of the library's budget, as well as to share the impact that libraries continue to have on our community. As you know, the Odenton and Maryland City at Russet libraries are in District 4 and serve more than 80,000 of our residents. And we've continued to serve our customers even in the midst of the pandemic. More than 30,000 people have tuned into our virtual programs. Since March, we've significantly increased our collection of ebooks, e-audiobooks, e-magazines, and streaming movies, resulting in more than 16,000 new digital users. We've expanded home access to popular databases like Ancestry.com and added valuable online learning resources, including Udemy, JobNow, and Lynda.com. We've increased hours for our free online tutoring service, with more than 36,000 people using BrainFuse to get homework help. More than 4,000 people have used our web chat services and have had their questions answered by email and social media. And we now offer Chromebook and Wi-Fi kits for checkout. And for the first time in our history, curbside pickup is available, with nearly 90,000 customers taking advantage of this safe option. While we are eager to be fully reopened, our customers have continued to express their appreciation for the services we have been able to provide. At the Maryland City at Russet Library, one of our customers was so grateful that she could use our computers to watch a relative's funeral service. At the Odenton branch, one of our virtual programs helped a customer who was studying for his citizenship test. He passed and was able to vote for the first time. But we need your support to make our libraries continue to grow and be better for the next 100 years, because this year is our 100th birthday. So we ask for your support for IET infrastructure. We would like to make our libraries finally fine-free for all cardholders and just reduce the barriers so that the people can reach our resources more than ever. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Cason. Next, we have gentleman Scott Blackketter.
Yes, hi, good evening. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can, sir.
Hi, this is Scott Blackketter. Thank you, Mr. Pittman and Mr. Pruski, for hosting and giving me a minute. As you would probably guess, I'm here to talk about rethinking the future of Millersville Park. This is a park, if some of you don't know, that is right on Millersville Road. It was acquired a number of years ago by Rex and Parks, and the plan has been to put a large commercial style tennis facility in the park. There is still $7 million in the budget set aside from a previous year allocation to make that happen. Yet the most recent development, as I understand it, is a request for bids was sent out and didn't receive any response. And so the project is somewhat stalled. I represent neighbors of Millersville Park, Old Millersville Neighborhood Association, as well as Indian Landing Community Association, all of which represent about 250 households all largely opposed to sort of shoehorning such a large project into a residential neighborhood with already traffic problems. We would much rather see a more community-based, small scale, and much less expensive community park instead. Thank you so much for your time, and I hope to talk about it more in the future. Take care.
Thank you very much, sir. We appreciate it. Next, we have Tim Lemke.
Hi, good evening. I'm Tim Lemke. I live in Odenton, right off of Annapolis Road, across from the shopping center. A few things I'd like to echo. I think I'd like to voice my support for the Odenton Library Park as well. I think that would be a sort of a really great feature as part of the Odenton Town Center. I'd like to also echo what Mike Posdall said about actually trying to see some shovels in the ground regarding some of these projects, most notably the Gork Park expansion. I know we've seemed to be talking about feasibility studies and a lot of discussion, but let's see if we can move forward and actually get these things done. The sort of broader point I want to make is that, in the last year, we've seen a lot of people in the county show great ingenuity and resourcefulness in working through the challenges of the pandemic. I'm talking specifically about teachers, our health department, and our first responders. Now is not the time to be stingy with regard to pay increases, step increases, and resources. So let's keep that in mind as we take a look at this budget. The other thing I'd mention is to just take a look also at perhaps some improvements to pedestrian connectivity in some of the areas of Odenton, specifically looking at some of the neighborhoods north of Annapolis Road and just trying to make it a little bit more walkable for everybody. Thanks so much.
Thank you very much, sir. Next, we have Chris Weinstein.
Yes, hello. My name is Chris Weinstein. I'm a District 4 resident, and I'm also the president of Friends of Anne Arundel County Animal Care and Control. Last year, we went to all the budget town halls, and we hope to do that again this year, at least over the computer. We want to thank everybody on the council and Mr. Pittman for the support that the shelter received after the budget hearings last year. We did get a couple of the things that we really wanted, including a rescue and volunteer coordinator who has just started working this month. And we did get replacement dog gates, cage gates, which are still being finished up right now. Just wonderful things, but there of course are many other things that the shelter still needs after so many years of being neglected. One thing we all would really like to see is a full-time staff veterinarian. Despite the fact that the shelter gets 5,000 to 6,000 animals a year, it has no veterinarian on staff, which doesn't meet the state standards of care for shelter of pets to not have one. We would appreciate also additional funds for outside medical services. Right now, our nonprofit, which was started by shelter volunteers, is paying for those services. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Weinstein. It seems like Mr. Jason Schweer is our last person. So if anyone else would like to make a comment, please raise your hand.
Okay, can you understand me?
Yes, we can, sir.
Great, sorry. Sometimes I come through like a check mode.
No, that's okay.
Sure. So I want to say, yes, I'm Jason Schweer. I'm on the Odenton Town Center Advisory Committee as well. And I'm also the president of Town Center Commons HOA and then on the boards for Condo 1 and Condo 2. So I have a lot of stuff in Town Center Commons. And so I wanted to say, one, thank you for everything you're doing with this, like electronically. I think Anne Arundel County's been doing a fabulous job, to be very honest, with how much you have pushed out on the websites and how easy everything is to get to. Like an event like this it's just phenomenal. So I remember before you were elected, this was one of your promises, and definitely you fulfilled it. So good job, Mr. Penn. Really appreciate that. I'm here because I wanted to speak in favor of the Odenton Library Park as well. So one of the big comments from our residents since Town Center Commons started is there's very little to do in Odenton other than basically shop. And that's not even all the type of shopping. Usually you have to leave Odenton to go buy everything that you need. And so the goal was to have a walkable community in Town Center Core. So that way we could start decreasing the number of cars on the road, because there are a lot of cars that drive through Odenton. So strong in favor of the park from all of our residents, just because it's walkable and it has a lot of activities for children to do, which we currently do not have. One thing I did want to note, and this is a discussion we've had in our HOA, is that we understand that the county does have low taxes, and that's great, but low taxes also equals low amenities. And so, like myself, I will only speak for me on this. I'm okay with taxes going up if we see more services. So that is definitely an option to consider, because it's worth having the money to pay for some amenities for people to do things. Thank you.
Thank you very much, sir. Next, we have Mr. Fred Rydell.
Hello, County Executive Pittman and Councilman Persky, thank you for the opportunity. I am the captain at the Wall Chapel Fire Station and also the 4th Battalion representative to Local 1563 International Association of Firefighters. Just want to say thank you, and just want to say that we support Chief Wolford's budget. One of the big things is we run a lot of calls in the Wall Chapel area, and one of the big things in the budget request is for apparatus replacement, and that is one of the priorities of the fire. The fire department's putting forward, and I just want to go on record to say that we support that. And I'd like to encourage all of the citizens, once we get back to normal operations, if you will, in the sense of the pandemic, to please stop by the firehouse, stop by and say hi. And also, hopefully I'll be seeing some of you at some of the community association Zoom meetings. And also, once we get back to, like I say, normal operations, I'll be seeing you at some of your community association meetings in person as well. So just want to say thank you and appreciate the opportunity to speak, and that we do support Chief Wolford's budget.
Thank you very much, sir. Next, we have Wiley Donaldson. Oops, let me allow you to speak, sorry. Go ahead, sir. Mr. Donaldson, are you there?
Finally got the icon came up. Can you hear me now, ma'am?
Yes, we can. Go ahead, sir.
Okay. Well, I thank County Executive Pittman and County Executive for County Councilman for having us on today. And my name is Wiley Donaldson, and I'm the president of the Odenton Heritage Society. And I also would like to go on record to strongly support the community park that would be on property adjacent to the Odenton Library and the Mark Line. It's a big piece of property. It would be a big boon to the residents of Odenton to have something to do. I've heard it mentioned, and I also attend the Odenton Town Center Advisory Committee meetings, and I hear oftentimes that there's nothing to do in Odenton. In fact, someone even mentioned if you spell Odenton backwards, it's nothing to do. But I can find that the park, the population in the West County area has just gone out of sight, and there are a lot of folks that walk their dogs and so forth. And really, we don't have a place like that that's local that we can do those kind of things. So I'm a lifelong resident of Odenton. I was born here. There was nothing to do when I was growing up except join the fire department, which I did. But I'm now 82 years old, and I find that unless I want gasoline, a pizza pie, or I have a toothache, there's not a whole lot to do in Odenton. I have to go out of town to do it. So thank you very much. And Mr. Pittman, I would strongly suggest and hope that we could put some money in the budget that could help us with our park there. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Donaldson. And next we have Mr. O'Brien Atkinson.
Good evening. If you can hear me okay, my name is Obie Atkinson. I'm the president of Anne Arundel County's Fraternal Order of Police. I just want to thank both Councilman Pruski and County Executive Pittman for their support in the last budget and previous budgets help us move away from our prior practices, or I'm sorry, help us move away from the debits and shortfalls that prior administrations have brought to us. One of the things that we were able to do this year is move away from the practice of having multiple unions and employee contracts, which we had called one of the greatest inefficiencies of county government. We are now merged with our sergeants and lieutenants, and we're working with the Office of Personnel to bring our contracts together. And we think that's going to be a step in the right direction. And I know we could not have done this without County Executive Pittman and without Councilman Pruski's assistance. We have a new chief, and I know our new chief has had a very rough first 30 days, but we're looking forward to working with her as we move our department forward. One of the things I want to mention real quick is that the COVID virus, we've suffered both the physical and financial effects of the COVID virus as a police department. And we just ask that the citizens and our elected officials continue to support us both financially and vocally as the days move ahead. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Atkinson. And we have one more, Mrs. Zapersky. Would you like to speak again?
Is that for me?
Yes, that's for you, sir.
Okay. We have spent quite a bit of money on the Route 198 beautification from the Baltimore-Washington Parkway to the county line. And invariably, people are speeding there like crazy. And just the other day, went out there and saw a little over $7,000 worth of damage that a speeding car did in driving through some of the brush and stuff. And this is a constant thing. In addition to that, there's a number, because of the proximity of the Baltimore-Washington Parkway, people coming from 198 go via 190, the Maryland City area at a high rate of speed to get to 197, so they can eliminate quite a few miles of backup road to get back onto the Baltimore-Washington Parkway. And I'm asking for additional police to get speed traps or something in this area, because it's just becoming a constant nuisance and a danger to people, pedestrians, as well as children playing out in the street. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Zapersky. Next, we have Mr. Michael Shire.
Good evening. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, we can, sir.
Great, thank you. My name is Michael Shire. I serve on the executive board of the Fraternal Order of Police for our county, and I'm also a proud resident of this district and proud of my councilman, Andrew Pruski. So thank you for your time and thank you for your support. Again, I'd echo Mr. Atkinson's support for Councilman Pruski and County Executive Pittman. They've been instrumental in helping move our agency forward over the past few years. We, as police officers, are very proud to serve our great communities, and we cannot succeed in doing the job that we do without the budgetary and vocal support of our leaders. We know that our agency has worked hard to bring these budgetary requests to the county executive's office and to the public, and we know that they're necessary for the efficient and effective operation of our police department. They're neither frivolous nor extravagant, and we strongly urge you to fully fund our police department so that we can continue the difficult job of protecting our citizens, particularly in these difficult times. Again, thank you for your support, and thank you again.
You are most welcome, Mr. Shire. I believe there's no more hands raised, so if there's anyone else who would like to give testimony or make their comment, please use the raise hand function. I notice there's a couple of people in chat. Oh, same people. But if not, if there's no one else who'd like to make a comment, I will hand it back to you, Mr. Pittman and Councilman Pruski.
All right, I think.
I'm sorry, sir. What? There's one more hand raised. Would you like me to call on him before you respond to
Sure.
that?
Yes, please.
I'm sorry about that. Mr. David Demers, would you like to speak?
Yes, if I could. I'm a resident of Millersville. A couple of comments, really. I do support the Odenton Library Park. That sounds like a great idea. Someone mentioned trying to make just any areas in the county more walkable. I think that would be a big improvement that would help a lot of people, a lot of generations. I had two questions. I know the budget slides were up quite a while ago, but one indicated that there's something going to be done along the South Shore Trail. I don't expect you to answer now, but what would, I guess, the details of what exactly would be done on the South Shore Trail in this next coming year, and Route 3 improvements, details of what exactly that would be. And that's it.
Thank you very much, sir.
All right, why don't you go first, Councilman Pruski, and just close us out with your thoughts and responses, and then I'll follow you.
Sure. Thank you, Mr. County Executive. And again, to the budget staff, Ms. Jones, wonderful job in terms of getting everyone. This is a unique time because normally we would be together at Arundel High School in the cafeteria and certainly be able to share greater testimony. And I do want to remind folks, this is not the only opportunity. I am personally holding regional budget workshops by community. And the reason why I'm doing that is because I want to make sure that everyone has a voice and gets heard. But I do want to respond to some of the comments that were made this evening just quickly. First of all, I want to thank all the community leaders that were on, all the representative groups from our police, fire, library. And even I know in the chat, we had our school nurses. I think a lot of people forget about them as well in the work that they're doing along with our teachers and school system. The one kind of overarching theme, I think, and the county executive probably gets an earful from me frequently on this, is in regards to moving capital projects along. I think the history of Western Anne Arundel County, and particularly District 4 and even District 1, is that when Fort Meade kind of expanded and has grown, and along with other communities, the quality of life aspects in terms of parks, recs, and services didn't have the same growth. And so certainly that's why you're hearing from folks about the sidewalks that maybe are in older communities, the park in Odenton, so people have open space and other things, and even the roads, schools, and other services. So I think it's critical, regardless of a pandemic, that we continue to upgrade those services. And I really appreciate the comment too. And again, if there's any possible way to continue to kind of accelerate some of these projects with shovels in the ground. Certainly, I will say, and this is obvious, given the current pandemic and situation, things were delayed both financially and also planning wise. But certainly we need to get back and continue our motivation to make sure that those items are of interest. And also we need to be fiscally responsible. I recognize right now, and I see this in family, friends, and calls that I get, frequent emails about people who are on unemployment, people who really need food, shelter. I mean, you name it, the basic necessities of life. And I think we all need to be sensitive to that and making sure that we provide a budget that does the best to help those that are most vulnerable. And I want to thank particularly some of the nonprofit services, but also county agencies that are addressing those items. But I will finish with this. Thank you again for everybody coming. I will be sharing, and I'm sure at some point, the county executive's email, because this is not the only time that we need to make our voices heard. I know tonight there were a few people that wanted to come and talk about, like, the swim center, for instance, but they felt with all the priorities and hearing the budget presentation, wanted to see kind of how things go. But I'm sure there'll be further emails in regards to that and other things. So again, I'm going to stop there. Thank you to our community leaders and people, and thank you to the county executive and their staff for your time. I appreciate you all. Thank you.
Thank you, Andrew. You all have a great representative in Andrew Pruski. He's responsible and vocal on your behalf. So I agree. I heard a lot about parks, and particularly the plan for the park at the Odenton Library. which I love. Odenton Town Center is, I think all of us recognize that there's so much potential there that has not been realized. Parking garage is another thing on the list that wasn't talked about tonight. And walkability, no more sidewalks to nowhere. So the sidewalks are in the budget. The Gork Park improvements, they say, putting out for bid in February, construction beginning in July. I get the frustration. I'm from the private sector and new to government as well. And it's mind-boggling to me how long things take, and how much paperwork and red tape there is involved in everything in government. And but I agree with Andrew that West County, and with some of you, that West County has grown in population and been left behind in terms of amenities and things to do, and parks are at the top of that list. So we know that, our Rec and Parks team knows that, and so we want to move as quickly as we can. I want to thank the police and firefighters that came tonight. I want to thank them for their service, and during this pandemic, they have gone above and beyond. They have risked themselves and their families, and I just want to thank them. And I think they know that we have prioritized public safety in our budgets, and will continue to do so. The one thing that we didn't talk about tonight much was COVID, which is kind of refreshing because it seems like it's all we talk about, but I can't leave without saying something about it. And part of that is just thanking county staff in every department for the work that they've done, and stepping up and creating new programs. But really particularly in the health department, where they've had to do contact tracing with more and more people as case numbers increase, testing and ramp that up, and now vaccinations and ramp that up. And I don't know if you noticed today that we announced on social media that Anne Arundel County will move into phase 1B starting Monday. There's going to be an announcement about some of the logistics tomorrow and how to sign up. But what that means, and the reason that we are doing that, is that folks over 75 are in 1B, and the death rate is too high. We now, 25 in the last week, we're talking, 100 people a month. We know that the death rate is highest among our elderly, so they're the most vulnerable. So we're moving forward with that. We've got sites that are going to be set up where people can come and get this done. It's going to take some time, but we had to move them up. We've done a great job with first responders getting them vaccinated quickly, and I want to thank our fire department for that. They're logistics geniuses, and they pulled that off in a very short amount of time. So Anne Arundel County was third of all the 24 counties in terms of how many we vaccinated so far, which allows us to move forward a little quicker than other counties. But it's taking hard work, and the hours people working are unbelievable. So hang with us for these final weeks, couple more months of dealing with these high rates, and help us push them down, because we're in that last battle where we can actually save lives. And I want to reiterate what Councilman Pruski said too about this is not your last opportunity. I mean, we want you to engage with local government wherever and whenever you can. We've set up these online tools to do it. We have our CECS, Community Engagement and Constituent Service staff, who you can contact anytime. If you're not on their newsletter list already, please get on it and really stay engaged, because that's the only way that we know what the needs are. And I can assure you from the first 2 years budgets that we've done, that when we're sitting down there making those final decisions, that the things that get said, the things that got said tonight, are going to be ringing in my ears, and often do push us over the edge on funding projects. So it's worthwhile to participate, and thank you everybody for doing so. Have a wonderful evening.